begin the
Hello everyone, my name is Tim Withington. I'm the Coding Product Manager at Eclipse. I've been involved in medical encoding since its inception, about 1996-97. I work for several major companies, major pharmaceutical companies, two major pharmaceutical companies and one biotech. I also created a coding group for a CRO back in the day. Today we're going to discuss ATC coding. ATC stands for the Anatomical Therapeutic Chemical Classification System, or the ATC. It's been maintained by the WHO, World Health Organization Collaborating Center for Drug Statistics Methodology in Oslo, Norway. The system is really good at providing a global standard for classifying medical substances and serves as a tool, a really good tool for drug utilization research. The ATC chemical classification began with drug consumption research in the 1960s, as this amazing slide tells us. 1968, two men, Engel and Sedaris, published The Consumption of Drugs, a report of a study, 1966 to 1967. In 1969, a symposium in Oslo on the consumption of drugs organized by the World Health Organization Regional Office for Europe. 1976 was its first use. Nordic Council on Medicines collaborated with Norwegian researchers to publish the ATC methodology for the first time. 1981, the World Health Organization Regional Office for Europe recommends ATCs for international drug utilization studies. 1982, the World Health Organization establishes the Collaborating Center for Drug Statistics Methodology in Oslo. In 1996, recognizing the need to promote the adoption of the ATC methodology, WHO brought management of ATCs under their headquarters in Geneva and prioritized it. There are several main groups for ATCs, and they're divided according to organ or system in which they act and or their therapeutic and chemical characteristics. As you can see, this list goes from A to V, hence the ABCs of ATC coding. Each lower-level ATC code stands for a pharmaceutically used substance or a combination of substances in a single indication or use. So normally, all we need are 3 ATC codes to code a drug. We can see at first level, which would be A, for the drug glibenclamide. See the first level A.
Clear on what you're after.
Would be the alimentary tract and metabolism. Second level, A10, would be the main therapeutic group. And for glibenclamide, those are medicines used in diabetes. Third level, A10B, would be for blood glucose lowering medicines. Now, because glibenclamide is not the only medicine out there that lowers blood glucose levels, we require additional coding to provide more detail for this med. So glibenclamide has 2 more ATC codes. One, A10BB, which would be the 4th level. Sulfonamides, and urea derivatives, and A10BB01, fifth level subgroup for chemical substances, which is glibenclamide. There are two major overarching ATC coding guiding principles, and the first one is each drug or compound should resolve to a unique single code for indication and route of administration. So it should have a unique single code for indication and route of administration. Lower level codes will only be applied if necessary. If a drug is already uniquely identified at the third level, the fourth and fifth levels are not required. The main purpose of ATC coding is for presenting drug utilization statistics, primarily for improving drug use. We can also use ATC coding to estimate frequency trends in spontaneously reported drug safety cases of suspected adverse events. And you can also screen for double medications. And double medications are a little bit complicated. You can have a medication with the same ingredients, identical ingredients, taken by the same patient, but not with the same pharmaceutical or pharmacodynamic properties. You can have another drug with two chemically different substances that have the same pharmacodynamic properties. So this you can glean using ATC coding. Other uses for ATC coding are they're used to create drug catalogs, and one that we all know and love is Martindale's. They're also used to create the WHO Essential Drug List. WHO, however, states that ATC classification should not be used for pricing, reimbursement, or pharmaceutical marketing purposes. But as we'll see in the next slide, that's not always the case. Some other common uses: ATC coding is used by the World Health Organization, CC, and various agencies to track the incidence of adverse events associated with the drug's utilization. ATC classification of a drug can be leveraged by a manufacturer to seek to rebrand a drug combination by citing newly acquired value differentiators by adding ATCs. Despite the World Health Organization's communications to the contrary on the previous slide, ATC codes are in fact widely used outside of North America in pricing and reimbursement negotiations. Different ATC codes can also be assigned the same active ingredient if it's combined with another active ingredient, and this can help to extend the life of an older product by adding ATCs to a product. Company can utilize those ATCs to extend the life of that product. Drugs can have more than one indication. For example, cancer drugs like Avastin or chemotherapeutics or corticosteroids. When out-licensing such compounds in development, the licensor is likely to point at the potential of a drug in several indications. This also means that a drug may have more than one ATC code. Acetylsalicylic acid, or aspirin as we all know it to be, has an ATC code of A01AD05. And that's the code, the ATC code, when aspirin is utilized for local oral treatment. Aspirin also has an ATC code of B01AC06 for when aspirin is used as a platelet inhibitor. And it also has an ATC code of NO2BA01 when aspirin is used as an analgesic or as an antipyretic. So on the other hand, several different brands share the same code if they have the same active substances and indication. There's three different types of coding scenarios when utilizing ATCs. We have simple codes, which are drugs or compounds that act on only one system and are used for only one indication and have one single route of administration. Multiple indications are drugs or compounds with multiple indications result in a single drug. Actually, drugs or compounds with multiple indications result in a single drug having multiple ATC codes applied based on either indication or route of administration. Multiple codes? Diseases where there are multiple drugs used to treat different systems, resulting in multiple codes for the same indication. We'll review each of these in our upcoming demonstration. As we mentioned previously, there are different categories of ATC codes that vary according to the complexity of the classification. We'll want to examine each one of these codes to gain an understanding as to how the ATC dictionary works and some of the options that we have to use, as well as how to search for ATC values to assign while we're coding drugs. Let's begin with simple ATC assignment. Remember that one of our guiding principles of ATC coding is that only one ATC code will be assigned for each route of administration. For example, pharmaceutical forms with similar ingredients, indication and strength will have the same ATC code. So when the administration options and use of indication are narrow, we expect only one ATC code for a compound. One example is linagliptin, a DPP-4 inhibitor antidiabetic. If we browse for linagliptin, we will see that we have a list of options for ATC codes, primarily driven by the usage of the drug, and the substances that use that drug. Example, Tradjenta. Linagliptin belongs to the group of diabetes medications called DPP-4 inhibitors. It works by increasing the amount of incretin released by the intestine. Incretin is a hormone that raises insulin levels when blood sugar is high, especially after a meal, and decreases the amount of sugar made by the body. We see we have only one option, A10DH. We only go down 3 levels on ATC coding because another guiding principle is that we avoid a 4th level when only one compound will be in that level, based on indication and administration. We can get more information on the drug through the dictionary when common ingredients are also listed. For example, formoterol. Formoterol has a large number of results driven by substances using the ingredients formoterol or formoterol fumarate. Formoterol is a beta-2 antagonist used as a bronchodilator for use in asthma and other respiratory ailments. Selecting formoterol fumarate we see the list of drugs that use that ingredient. We can then scroll to our desired drug without switching tabs and directly select We can then also directly select Oxys and its ATC code. Again, with only one ATC code available, we know that it's taken by an inhaling device to act quickly in the lungs. We can now see ATC coding for drugs with simple ATC code values is relatively straightforward. In other scenarios, we have a compound that may be applied to more than one indication. But again, our guiding principle is only one ATC code will be assigned for each route of administration and indication. This time, since we have multiple applications for the compound, we also expect multiple ATC codes. Let's look at the loxetine. Looking at our synonym substance list, we have a relatively long list of substances we can select from. But in this case, we vary by indication. If we're dealing with a major depressive disorder, we may expect the patient to be taking Cymbalta. We see antidepressants listed, but let's say we're actually dealing with urinary incontinence. We may expect the patient to be taking Yentriv. And we could code this instead to urologicals. Note that we do have to consider the indication very closely, as Cymbalta may also be used for diabetic neuropathic pain. So analgesics could also apply for Cymbalta. In this case, it's useful to have the related case or event information available to us to make such a determination. Having a coding system where ATC coding is performed in line with the drug coding is more efficient because of the availability of relevant qualifiers. But we can also have or see a variance in the number of ATC options we have based on the indication as well. Let's look at heparin, a compound commonly used for blood clotting. When we look at the ATC codes for heparin, we see that we have 3 ATC classifications from which we can choose. But if we were interested in a topical heparin, say like hydroid, we now see 7 different ATC codes. We may choose heparins for heparinoids for topical use, third option. If we're interested in increasing blood flow to a certain area. Or we may choose anti-inflammatory, first option, if we are more interested in treating subcutaneous muscle pain from a sports injury. Another example of using ATC codes is when a patient takes multiple types of medication for the same indication. Let's examine the case of osteoporosis. Here, the patient may be taking multiple medications for the same disease. For instance, vitamin D, probably a calcium supplement,
Finally, we may also see that there are several ATC codes for different administration forms and therapeutic uses. We saw this already with heparin, but when we stepped through the topical form of heparin, we were more focused on the different indications of the topical forms. If you recall, we also saw that the topical form had 7 verse 3 classifications based on the topical versus. We can see this also with prednisolone, which is a steroid that can treat many diseases and conditions, especially those related to inflammation. It's often used to treat chronic illnesses such as colitis, multiple sclerosis, and arthritis. It may also be delivered in multiple routes. As an antidiarrheal, it may be delivered as a rectal foam, A07EA01. We can see now that we're dealing with the alimentary tract A and an antidiarrheal 07. As a hemorrhoid treatment, it may be delivered as a rectal suppository, C05AA04. Here we can see we're dealing with a vasoconstriction, 05, of the cardiovascular system, C. As a decongestant, it may be delivered as a nasal spray, R01AD02. Where we see we have a nasal preparation of a corticosteroid, 01, for respiratory system, R. As a treatment for the inflammation of the eye, it may be delivered as an eye drop, SO1BA04. Where we have ophthalmologicals, S01, or for inflammation of the ear canal with an ear drop, SO2BA03. We have autologicals. In any event, the compound remains prednisolone. So we can see that ATC codes can vary based on the breadth of application or of the underlying compound. Sometimes it's quite straightforward, but we only have one indication and administrative route like we saw with Tradjenta and Oxys. But we have also seen that there may instances like Cymbalta where we need to know the indication to make the correct classification. It's useful to understand related treatments for the same disease, like with osteoporosis, or be aware of the alternative routes of administration, as we saw with heparin or prednisolone. Though it may be complicated to conduct ATC coding for some of these compounds, using a coding application where ATC coding is managed in line with the actual drug coding allows for relevant information like administration route, indication, and ATC classification values to be readily accessible. With the information readily accessible, ATC coding is much more efficient and more accurate when classifying the drug.
We'll give everyone just a minute if they'd like to ask a few questions, and then we'll go over the questions that we have time for the remainder of this webinar. Hi, Tim, one of the first questions that had come in was who decides on new ATC codes and how does it relate to the WHO drug dictionary?
Well, the WHO Center in Oslo, Norway are the folks that are responsible for the development of ATC classification systems. So they decide on which new ATC codes are developed. The Uppsala Monitoring Center is a user of ATC codes, and they pretty much decide which ATC codes are developed and how they're mapped.
Thank you, Tim. And another question that had come in, which levels of the ATC codes are used in WHO drug dictionary?
Which levels are used in the WHO drug dictionary?
Correct, yes.
Well, we have the drug record number to identify generic products. We don't use the 5th level of the ATC code for that purpose. But drug record identifies active ingredients and single substances and unique combination of substances and multiple substance products. It's similar to the solution when we use the 5th level ATC code. New structure preparations have been made for the 5th level ATC codes because there are plans to introduce them in the future. To be able to introduce 5th level ATC codes, we need an agreement with WHO, Center for Drug Statistics and Methodology. We also have no time plan. WHO also has no time plan for the implementation yet. Future is important for you. So if you let us know, anybody lets us know what to prioritize for our specific tool, that would be valuable information.
Thank you, Tim. And we actually had another question that had come in, and I can answer this one. Can you filter so that you see the drugs for a single patient? And the answer to that is the way we set up this system for the demo doesn't have it that way, but at configuration we are able to do it that way if requested. And it looks like those are all the questions that had come in. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending the webinar today.
Yes, thank you very much. And I hope everyone enjoyed it very much.
Oh, and we also have a survey that will arrive to your email in the next couple of hours. So if you could fill out that survey, we would greatly appreciate it here at Eclipse. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining.